I'm going to start clapping now. National Coffee Day. You know, we all have our favorites. Tim Hortons. That's the French-Canadian way to say it. Starbucks, you know, if you have an office, you may have a Keurig, all kinds of stuff, right? You make it in a pot, you may have your own French press. But recently I headed over to Ferndale where I got a real lesson in the right way to have the right coffee. Chazzano Coffee. So we all think we know coffee, right? And we're getting it fast in all the usual suspect places, right? But when someone comes here, to me, you're like a sommelier. You know so much about the notes and what's happening with all the baristas. Educate us about some of the finer points that are easy to get.
So a cup of coffee should not be a complicated adventure. There's no scale needed. A French press is really the best way to prepare coffee because you're going to be able to control the amount of coffee you're using, and you can control the steep time. The bolder flavors come out, and you can really get a lot more flavor profiles. We've got 1,500 flavor profiles in coffee as opposed to 750 for wine. So there's a lot of profiles, anywhere from nutty to fruity. We have things that are floral, like jasmine. One of the things about coffee is we're constantly battling two things: the astringency of the coffee, the bitter bite that you get at the tip of your tongue. You know, you get that puckery taste, and that's acidity from the oil becoming rancid. And the second thing we're fighting is staleness, and I think you were mentioning that your throat gets dry. And part of what happens is when coffee gets stale, it creates a dry tongue effect when you drink it. So people that think they don't love coffee and they're adding cream and sugar, my notion is that they're actually doing that because they're masking what they intuitively know is not good. We obviously have a little bit of coffee, sugar, etc. But we have a nice little sign
Splendid
that says,
equal,
don't make me come down here. We use excellent coffee. We purchase coffee that's well-grown, high elevation. It gets really complex, but it should always be something that looks like it has no imperfections or very few imperfections. We want people to come here, and we want them to see what it looks like, because coffee should be an experience that's tactile, and you know, all the senses are being used.
So what countries are represented here?
This is the birthplace of coffee, in our opinion, and this is called Ethiopia Harar. We say this is the coffee God drinks. We've got Brazil Cerrado, which is what you're drinking.
That's what I have.
Mexico Chiapas. We have Nicaragua Jinotega. Sumatra Mandeling. This is Ethiopia Yirgacheffe, one of the smallest beans that we get in.
What should we know or be looking for in our coffee?
First thing you should know is the time it was roasted, not when it expires.
How far away from roasting date should we be?
You've got 2.5 weeks optimal time for coffee. So you should also know what roast quality. Obviously, the darker I go, the more of that burnt quality people talk about you're going to get, because that's what's happening. But boldness really has to do with the way the flavors come out on your tongue, on your palate. Body has to do with how it feels in your mouth.
What can I singularly request that's going to make that coffee drink or latte better? What would I ask them to do or not do?
You would ask him to buy Chazzano Coffee.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, joining us today is Julie Marcos and Katie Hag. It's good to see you.
Thank you for having us.
Here, ladies.
This is so wild because you really you've forgotten more about coffee than we know, you know, and for most of us, we just want to know, is it a good decade? And you're saying we need to stay within 2.5 weeks of roasting.
That's correct.
So much for us to think about here. So in the piece, you heard about a French press as being the best way to prepare coffee. How do we do that?
It's quite simple, actually. Katie's already made one, but you're going to want to know the size of your French press. This is an 8-cup press. You put 6 level scoops, 7 grams each, okay? And then you're going to add hot water. The temperature of the water is really what's important. You can go ahead and pour Tati and chuck some coffee. We're trying Ethiopia Limu today in honor of where Tati's from, Ethiopia. This has got some wonderful fruit notes. So the gist of it is coffee is not a complicated thing. You need a French press, some great coffee, and some hot water. And you need to know to steep it. You steep it depending on how you grind it. We grind it a little less coarse than most places. So we can make the time from 4 minutes down to 3 minutes to 2.5 if we want to. If you oversteep, you're going to lose some of the quality that these beans offer us.
Yeah.
The limu should have a fruit note. It should be wonderfully smooth, and you can slurp it like a wine so you don't burn yourself, because the temperature is important. It's 205 degrees.
Yeah.
So the gist of it is simplicity. Coffee should not be complicated. You do not need a scale. You do not need a $400 machine. You just need to know how to make a French press. That's really our preferred way. Those are cheap to get relatively. We sell them. You can get them, you know, all sorts of other stores.
Some of us use a French press already.
Now, we're going to talk about cold brew. And let me tell you, my experience until I was at your store was the idea that you ask for a cold brew in some places, they just run maybe coffee through a French press, right over ice. That's it. It's on the rocks.
That's
Yours
correct.
is a whole different deal.
That's correct. So we want to make sure that no coffee is being abused, so to speak. You should not get a cold brew that's been hot steeped and chilled. Because a lot of those places, when it first started, I would suppose it was leftover coffee, and they decided to make a new pot, and they just stuck it in the fridge, and they would pour it over ice. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's fine, but that's not what we do. We're going to use the best coffee. We're going to roast it 10 pounds at a time. Then we're going to put it in a giant toddy, a bucket, and we're going to grind it coarsely. We're going to let it sit 12 to 18 hours with double filtered water, and then we're going to bottle it. We're going to add some water to that.
We are.
That
Okay.
is,
That's it.
that is
Because it's
great.
highly concentrated after
That's
it's been
correct.
steeping for that long, right?
Yep, absolutely.
If
So
we
this-
drank that, we'd get the show done 15 minutes earlier.
That's correct. This is, I always say, warning, this is about like having a 4-ounce espresso. It's a lot of caffeine. You can mix more if you like,
Wow.
but just be aware you may get a little bit of a
This is
jolt.
delicious.
All right, so let's tell everybody where we can
I didn't
find
get the other one, too.
Chazzano's Coffee.
Chazzano Coffee Roasters is located at 1737 East 9 Mile Road in Ferndale. The easiest way to remember is we're the last light east of Ferndale, of Woodward. We're right by 75. If you're coming from south, don't turn on red, they'll ticket you. But come on in, we're open 7 to 6 every day.
Delightful store.
Friday at 4, we're closed Saturdays. That is the hardest thing to remember about Chazzano Coffee Roasters. Easiest way to remember is we are Jewish owned by a conservative family.
There you
we
go.
don't work on the Sabbath.
That's
Good to
it.
see you.
Easy.
Good to have you both here.
Thank you so
Thanks
much
again.
for being here.
Yeah,
Thank
nice
you.
to see you.
I'm drinking the coffee soda after this. We'll be right back with more Live in the D, but first, here's a Local 4 News update.